The knock on the door came like a thunderclap at dawn, shattering the quiet morning I shared with Ezra. "You've got 24 hours to get out," the landlord snarled as he shoved an eviction notice into my hands, his eyes narrowing with disgust after what he claimed was a disturbing report from the neighbors. My stomach dropped as I stood there in my pajamas, the paper trembling in my grip. It didn't take a genius to figure out what the report was about. The kiss Ezra and I shared in the backyard the night before, thinking the fence would shield us from prying eyes. But in this quiet Seattle suburb, nothing stayed hidden for long. Ezra appeared behind me, his hand gently resting on my shoulder, his voice steady despite the shock in his eyes. "This can't be legal, Matthias. We have rights." I wanted to believe him, but fear gripped me tighter than ever. How had our careful life crumbled so fast? We had moved into this cozy 3-bedroom rental 2 years ago, telling everyone we were just roommates splitting bills in a city where housing prices could crush dreams overnight. The house sat on a tree-lined street with a small backyard perfect for weekend barbecues and late-night talks under string lights. Ezra had picked it because the light in the living room was ideal for his photography work, and I loved the kitchen island where I could spread out my graphic design projects. No one asked questions. Until now. I closed the door slowly, the latch clicking like a final punctuation mark on the life we had built. Ezra pulled me into the kitchen, his dark eyes searching mine. At 31, he still had that quiet strength that had drawn me to him the first day we met at the downtown marketing firm. I was the new junior designer fresh out of art school, nervous about everything. He was the senior photographer who noticed my shaky hands during the team meeting and slid me a coffee without a word. Friendship came easy, late lunches, weekend hikes in the Cascades, sharing playlists. Then one rainy evening after a brutal deadline, sitting in his truck, everything shifted. One honest confession from me about feeling lost in my own skin, one soft admission from him that he felt the same pull. The kiss that followed wasn't planned, but it felt like coming home. Now home was slipping away. I read the notice again. Violation of quiet enjoyment clause. Immediate termination. No proof, no warning, just prejudice wrapped in legal-sounding language. Ezra poured us both coffee, his movements deliberate, the way he always got when things got heavy. "We're not packing anything yet," he said quietly. "Let's call Sarah. She's a tenant rights lawyer and owes me a favor from that wedding shoot last summer." I nodded, but my mind raced ahead to worst-case scenarios. Sleeping on friends' couches, explaining to my conservative parents back in Texas why their son was suddenly homeless with another man. They knew I was gay, had known since I was 22, but knowing and seeing were two different things. Mom had cried happy tears when I told her. Dad had gone silent for a week. They loved me, but Seattle felt safer than home ever did. Sarah arrived by 9, her briefcase looking too official for our sunlit kitchen. She scanned the lease, her eyebrows rising. "This is sloppy work on his part. The lease requires 30 days notice and documented cause. A neighbor complaint about a kiss doesn't qualify as cause under Washington law. We can fight this." Ezra squeezed my hand under the table, his palm warm and steady. For the first time that morning hope flickered. But hope came with questions I wasn't ready to answer. How much of ourselves would we have to expose to keep this roof over our heads? How many people would we have to tell before the world stopped trying to push us out? The rest of the day blurred into phone calls and emails. I called my best friend Lucas, who lived across town and worked as a barista/aspiring screenwriter. He showed up with donuts and outrage, pacing our living room like a caged lion. "This is textbook discrimination. You two have been the most boring couple on the block. Mowing the lawn, waving at neighbors, never even raising your voices. One kiss and suddenly you're criminals." His support felt good, but it also reminded me how fragile our safety net really was. Ezra stayed quiet through most of it, photographing the notice for records, organizing files on his laptop. I caught him staring out the window more than once, jaw tight. We had always been careful, but careful wasn't enough anymore. By evening the house felt smaller, every creak of the floorboards a reminder that tomorrow might be our last night here. Ezra and I sat on the back porch steps, the same steps where we had first said, "I love you," under a full moon 2 summers ago. He rested his head against my shoulder. Whatever happens, we do it together. No running. No hiding more than we already have. His words wrapped around the knot in my chest, loosening it just enough for me to breathe. I turned and kissed his forehead, the simple gesture feeling defiant now. The stars came out one by one, and for a moment the eviction notice seemed smaller than the life we had chosen to build. But morning would bring lawyers, landlords, and decisions that could change everything. I didn't know yet that the contract review would open doors we never expected, or that the man beside me would become both my anchor and my greatest test of courage. The next morning brought rain, the kind that turned Seattle streets into mirrors reflecting gray skies and uncertain futures. Sarah called at 8 sharp with an update. Landlord Harlan had doubled down, claiming moral clause violations he had conveniently added to the lease addendum last year. "We're filing an emergency motion to stay the eviction," she said. "But you two need to be prepared to testify if it goes to mediation." Testify. The word landed heavy. I pictured standing in front of strangers explaining that yes, I loved the man who shared my home, and no, that love didn't make us bad tenants. Ezra listened on speakerphone, his coffee mug paused halfway to his lips. When Sarah hung up, he set the mug down carefully. "I'm ready if you are." We spent the day gathering evidence, utility bills in both names, joint bank statements for rent, even neighbor testimonials Lucas volunteered to collect. Ezra suggested we reach out to my family first, give them a heads up before news traveled. The call to Texas was harder than I expected. Mom answered on the second ring, her voice bright until I explained the situation. "Oh honey, that's just plain wrong. You tell that landlord we raised you right." Dad's silence on the extension line spoke volumes, but he finally muttered, "You boys need anything you call." Their support, imperfect as it was, gave me strength I hadn't known I needed. Ezra's own family was another story. His parents lived in Spokane, conservative to the core, and they still believed their son was figuring things out after his last serious relationship with a woman ended 5 years ago. We had agreed not to tell them yet. Some battles felt too big for 1 week. By afternoon, Lucas arrived with reinforcements, his girlfriend Mia, a social worker who specialized in housing advocacy. They turned our dining table into a command center, printing lease clauses, highlighting Washington tenant rights statutes. I watched Ezra move among them, calm and focused, the same way he directed photo shoots. But when we stole a moment alone in the hallway, he admitted, "I keep thinking about what happens if we lose. Where do we go? How do we keep building something real if the world keeps pushing back?" His vulnerability cracked something open in me. I had always leaned on his steadiness. Seeing him crack reminded me we were equals in this fight. The misunderstanding came that evening. Lucas mentioned offhand that a mutual friend at the firm had asked why we were both taking personal days. Ezra tensed. "Did you tell him anything?" The question came out sharper than intended. Lucas raised his hands. "Just that family stuff came up." Chill. But the air thickened. Later, after everyone left, Ezra paced the living room. "I'm sorry. I spent years hiding who I am at work. One slip and suddenly everyone knows." I pulled him down onto the couch, our fingers laced together. "We're not hiding anymore. Not from this." The conversation stretched late into the night, unearthing old fears. My college roommate who had stopped speaking to me after I came out, Ezra's high school coach who had benched him for distractions. We talked until the rain stopped and the house grew quiet again. The following day brought the contract review meeting. Sarah had arranged it at a neutral office downtown. Landlord Harlan arrived in a crisp button-down, his face set in the same disapproving lines I remembered from move-in day. Ezra and I sat across from him, Sarah between us like a shield. She slid the original lease across the table. Section 7, Paragraph 3. 30 days written notice for any non-payment or documented violation. You provided neither. Harlan's jaw worked. The neighbors saw. Sarah cut him off. Saw 2 consenting adults sharing a private backyard. That's not cause. The room felt smaller with every passing minute. I studied Harlan's face, wondering what life experiences had made him so quick to judge. Ezra spoke for the first time, voice even. We've been model tenants. Paid early every month. Maintained the property. This feels personal. Harlan didn't deny it. Instead, he leaned back, eyes flicking between us. I'll review the contract again tonight. But don't think this means I'm happy about it. We left the office with a temporary stay and a promise of renegotiation within 48 hours. Walking back to the car through downtown drizzle, Ezra stopped me under an awning. You okay? I nodded, but inside the adrenaline was fading into exhaustion mixed with something new. Pride. We had stood our ground. The city lights blurred through the rain, and for the first time the future didn't feel like it was slipping away. Yet I sensed the renegotiation would demand more than signatures. It would demand truth from all of us. The 48 hours stretched like taffy. Ezra and I cleaned the house top to bottom, not because we had to leave but because control felt good. We folded laundry in companionable silence, the kind that had always been our safe space. But tension hummed underneath. At work I fielded curious glances from colleagues who had heard rumors. My boss pulled me aside during lunch, asking if everything was all right at home. I gave a vague answer about lease issues, but the lie tasted bitter. Ezra faced similar whispers in the photography department. By the second evening, we were both raw. Lucas called with bad news wrapped in good intentions. That friend from the firm, Jake, he might have mentioned something to HR. Nothing official, but you know how gossip spreads. The betrayal stung. Jake had been at our housewarming 2 years ago, laughing over pizza. Now his loose lips threatened the professional lives we had built. Ezra's reaction surprised me. Instead of anger, he went quiet, staring at the ceiling from our bed. Maybe it's time we stopped worrying about what they think. His words lingered long after the lights went out. The next morning, Harlan's lawyer emailed, proposing mediation at the rental house itself. Sarah warned us it was unusual but not illegal. We agreed. When Harlan arrived, he brought his son, a tall man in his late 20s who introduced himself as the one handling family properties now that his father's health was declining. The son, Ezra's eyes met mine at the name. Wait, no, the son's name was different, but something in his posture reminded me of the quiet strength I loved in my own Ezra. Mediation began in our living room, the same room where we had hosted game nights and quiet anniversaries. Harlan listed complaints, noise from our lifestyle, potential property value drop. Sarah countered with facts. I watched my Ezra lean forward, calm but firm. We love this house. We've invested time and care into it. Discrimination shouldn't be how you manage your properties. Harlan's son stayed mostly silent, taking notes, but I caught him glancing at us with something softer than judgment. The meeting ended with a 2-week extension while Harlan reviewed the full contract language with counsel. We shook hands stiffly. After they left, Ezra and I stood in the empty living room, the weight of the morning settling. He almost looked ashamed, Ezra said. I nodded. Small cracks in prejudice sometimes started with shame. That afternoon we took a drive to the coast to clear our heads. The Pacific crashed against rocky shores while we walked the beach hand in hand. No one around to stare. Ezra stopped at the water's edge. I've been thinking about telling my parents. Not because of the house, but because hiding feels heavier than losing it. His confession cracked open the last wall between us. We talked about fear and freedom all the way home. Back in the house, we cooked dinner together, simple pasta, shared wine, and the ordinary ritual felt revolutionary. The following week brought another twist. My mother flew in unannounced, suitcase in hand, determined to help her boys. She hugged Ezra like he was already family, then rolled up her sleeves and started organizing our paperwork. Her presence shifted the energy. She told stories of her own youth, small acts of rebellion against her strict upbringing. Watching her and Ezra bond over coffee one morning, I realized family wasn't just blood. It was choice. Yet the renegotiation loomed. Harlan's lawyer scheduled the final meeting for Friday. We prepared statements, gathered maintenance receipts, practiced calm responses. Lucas and Mia promised to be outside in case we needed moral support. Thursday night, the power flickered during a storm. We lit candles and sat on the floor like teenagers, sharing memories. Ezra traced the line of my jaw in the flickering light. No matter what happens tomorrow, I choose you. Every single day. The words wrapped around my heart, stronger than any lease. Morning would test us, but tonight we had each other, and that felt like the real home we had been building all along. Friday arrived wrapped in pale sunlight. We dressed carefully, button-downs and slacks that said professional yet human. Sarah met us at the house, briefcase ready. Harlan and his son arrived precisely at 10. The son carried a folder thick with papers. Mediation reconvened at the dining table where we had eaten countless meals. Harlan cleared his throat. After thorough review of the original contract and Washington statutes, my counsel advises that the eviction notice was improperly issued. The admission hung in the air like unexpected rain. Sarah pressed gently. So you're prepared to withdraw it? Harlan nodded once, stiffly. But his son spoke up for the first time. There's more. Dad and I discussed tenant protections at length. We're offering a new 2-year lease at the current rate with an added non-discrimination clause. I blinked. Ezra's hand found mine under the table. The son continued, voice measured. We also want to apologize. Personal bias has no place in business. Harlan looked at the floor, jaw working. The moment stretched, heavy with years of unexamined beliefs meeting hard legal reality. Sarah reviewed the new documents line by line. Everything checked out. When she nodded approval, the tension broke. Harlan stood, shook our hands with surprising firmness, and left with his son. The son paused at the door. You two have a good home here. Keep it that way. His eyes held something like respect. After the door closed, we stood in stunned silence. Sarah grinned. You did it. Ezra pulled me into a tight hug, the kind that said more than words ever could. Lucas and Mia burst in seconds later, cheers echoing off the walls. My mother arrived with celebratory groceries, turning the afternoon into an impromptu party. Yet beneath the joy, I felt the weight of what we had almost lost. That evening, after everyone left, Ezra and I sat on the back porch again. We almost let fear win, he said softly. I leaned into him. But we didn't. And that changes everything. The following weeks settled into new rhythms. Work became easier once the gossip died down. Jake even apologized over coffee, admitting he had been thoughtless. Ezra's parents called after he finally told them the truth. The conversation was awkward, full of long pauses, but ended with his mother saying she wanted to meet me. Small steps. My own family grew closer through the ordeal. Dad started texting weekly check-ins. Lucas finished his screenplay inspired by our fight, casting us as background consultants. Life expanded in ways we hadn't anticipated. One Saturday we drove to the Cascades, the same trail where our friendship had first deepened into love. Halfway up, Ezra stopped at the overlook. The city spread out below like a promise. I used to think love meant staying safe, he said. Now I know it means choosing courage every day. We stood there until the sun dipped low, painting the mountains gold. The house waited for us when we returned. Lights on, porch swing creaking gently. It wasn't just walls and a roof anymore. It was proof that standing together could bend the world just enough to let us breathe. Yet growth isn't linear. Old doubts still surfaced in quiet moments. Worries about future landlords, future families, future versions of ourselves. We talked them through, learning that vulnerability wasn't weakness. The contract review had done more than save our home. It had forced every hidden corner of our lives into the light, where healing could finally begin. Months passed, seasons shifting from rainy spring to warm summer. The new lease felt like armor we had earned. Ezra's photography business grew after a local gallery featured his series on home as choice. Subtle images of our backyard, our hands intertwined on the kitchen counter, the empty porch swing waiting for us. I landed a promotion at the firm, the same one where whispers had once threatened us. Life moved forward, but the eviction scare had left invisible scars we were still learning to trace. One Friday evening, Ezra came home quieter than usual. I found him on the back porch, staring at the fence that had once failed to protect us. "My parents want to visit next month," he said. "They're trying, but I can feel the questions they're not asking." We sat together as twilight settled, talking through scripts and boundaries. His courage inspired mine. I suggested hosting a small dinner, my mom flying in too, Lucas and Mia rounding out the table. Neutral ground, chosen family. Ezra agreed, but I saw the flicker of fear in his eyes. The next weeks became preparation, not just cleaning, but emotional groundwork. We practiced answers, rehearsed stories that honored our truth without apology. The misunderstanding that nearly undid us came 2 days before the visit. Ezra's mother called early, asking if we could tone things down for Dad's sake. Ezra hung up shaken. "She still sees us as a phase." I held him while he processed the sting. Instead of canceling, we doubled down, setting the table with intention, choosing music that reflected our journey. The dinner itself unfolded better than expected. Ezra's father shook my hand longer than necessary, gruff voice saying, "You make my son happy. That's what matters." Small victories accumulated like stones in a path. Yet the real test arrived unannounced. A new neighbor moved in next door, the same one who had reported the kiss. She knocked one Saturday with a plate of cookies and an apology. "I was wrong. Seeing you two through the years, you're good people." Her words cracked open old wounds and let light in. Ezra and I spent the evening talking about forgiveness, not for her sake, but for ours. Letting go freed energy we hadn't realized we were wasting. Work brought another layer. My boss asked me to lead a diversity initiative, citing our story as inspiration. The irony wasn't lost on me. Standing in front of colleagues, I shared just enough. How fear of losing home taught us to claim our space in the world. Ezra sat in the back row, pride shining in his eyes. Afterward, he pulled me aside. "You've grown so much." The compliment landed deep. I had started this journey terrified of being seen. Now I stood taller because of it. One quiet night, we revisited the original eviction notice, now framed ironically above the desk as a reminder. Ezra traced the paper. "We almost lost everything because someone else's discomfort mattered more than our love." His voice caught. I kissed his temple. "But we didn't. And we won't." The moment stretched into something sacred. 2 men who had chosen each other against the odds, still choosing every day. The house around us felt alive with possibility, every room holding memories of struggle and triumph. Summer faded into crisp autumn, leaves turning the neighborhood gold and red. Our home stood steady, the backyard fence now draped with fairy lights we had added as a quiet act of reclamation. Ezra's gallery show opened downtown, the centerpiece a large print of us on the porch steps the night the eviction threat lifted. Guests murmured appreciation. Strangers shook our hands. I watched him glow under the attention and felt my own heart expand. The boy who once feared being known now stood proud. My mother visited again for Thanksgiving, bringing recipes and laughter. We hosted Lucas and Mia, plus Ezra's parents who drove over from Spokane. The table overflowed with food and conversation that flowed easier than anyone expected. Ezra's father carved the turkey, glancing at us with something close to acceptance. Later, by the fire, he told Ezra quietly, "I'm proud of the man you've become." Tears followed, happy ones that washed away years of distance. I slipped outside to give them space, standing under the same stars that had witnessed our first "I love you." The universe felt kinder now. Yet growth demanded one final reckoning. A letter arrived from the property management company offering to buy the house outright for a generous sum. New owners wanted to develop the block. We sat at the kitchen table reading it together. The old fear flickered briefly, but this time we laughed. "They can't evict us from our life," Ezra said. We declined politely, recommitting to the home that had become our sanctuary. The decision felt like the last piece clicking into place. Christmas brought snow, rare for Seattle. We decorated together, hanging ornaments that told our story, An eviction notice replica turned into a snowflake, a photo of our first hike, a keychain from the coast. On Christmas Eve, we exchanged simple gifts. Ezra gave me a custom camera strap engraved with our names and the date we fought for the house. I gave him a framed map of the city with our favorite spots marked as home. We danced slowly in the living room to old jazz, the world outside muffled by snow. New Year's Eve, we stood on the porch watching fireworks bloom over the city. Ezra wrapped his arms around me from behind. Remember when one knock almost took everything? I turned in his embrace. And now look at us. The kiss we shared felt different, lighter, freer, earned. The house glowed behind us, windows warm with light. We had walked through fire and emerged stronger. Our love no longer a secret but a foundation. Looking back, every tear, every confrontation, every moment of doubt had carved us into better men. Matthias, the fearful designer, had become Matthias, the advocate. Ezra, the quiet photographer, had become Ezra, the visible partner. Together we had rewritten the rules of what home could mean. The neighborhood slept peacefully around us, but inside our walls 2 hearts beat in rhythm with possibility. True or false? Fighting for love when the world tries to evict you always makes you stronger in the end?